So let us all begin our study of Bhagavad Gita by reciting these auspicious prayers which make our heart fertile to receive the seeds of transcendental knowledge. Om Ajnanatimirandhasya Jnananjanashalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guroho Shri Yutapadakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadhutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha Namaum Vishnupadaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvisesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. हे कृष्णा करुणा सिंधो दीनबंधु जगतपते गोपेश गोपिका कांत राधा कांत नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्तवृंदा Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So I welcome you all. We are right now doing the second chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Am I audible loud and clear to everybody?
Yes, Mataji.
Yeah. We need to mute some people. My daddy. Yeah. So we are doing the second chapter of Gita, and today we will be doing the very last session. So a quick revision. What does the acronym Gita stand for? G stands for?
Guru.
Guru, yes. In our first session of the second chapter, we have understood what is the importance of Guru in one's life and how to approach a spiritual master. Next session, I stands for?
Identity.
Identity. So what was the core concept that we have learned in identity?
That we are soul, not body.
Yes, the very core and foundational concept of spiritual understanding, that our true identity is the soul, Atma, and not this body. The body is just like a dress, which we give up at the time of leaving body, at the time of death, technically. Then the next is two. T stands for?
Two duties.
Two duties, exactly. So we understood there are two duties. What are the two duties?
Sanatana Dharma.
Yes. And? Varnashrama Dharma. So Sanatana Dharma is the Dharma of the soul. And next is the Dharma of the body, that is Varnashrama Dharma. Yeah, this Dharma of the body and the dharma of the soul. These are the two duties which we spoke about. So today the final section is A. A stands for
Atmarama.
Atma Rama. Yes. So what is Atma Rama? Have you all seen the poster that I have sent you?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes. Any comments on the poster? What's your understanding about the poster? And how is it connected to Atma Rama? Anybody? Okay, what is the meaning of Atma Rama?
God in us, ma'am.
Uh, okay, actually, Atma Rama has many, many meanings. There are Chaitanya Charitamrita explains there are more than 70 meanings to what Atma Rama means. But actually, the most popular meaning and in the context in which we are talking right now today, Atma Rama means one who is satisfied within himself. That means Rama means Rama means pleasure. One who finds pleasure within himself. That means for happiness and pleasure, they don't have to go and search elsewhere. They find it within themselves. And those who have achieved that state of being where one finds happiness within oneself, that state is called Atmarama. One who takes pleasure within oneself. Actually, Krishna himself is Atma Rama. That is, he is satisfied within himself. He does not need anything external to make him happy. So this Atma Rama state comes at a very higher, at the state of self-realization. So that is what is the concept we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about some very nice concepts and some interesting stories from the 12th century of India. So we will begin our section today. Text 54. Arjuna uvacha स्थितप्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशव स्थितधी किं प्रभाषेत किमासीत व्रजेत किम्.
स्थिति प्रज्ञस्य का भाषा समाधिस्थस्य केशव स्थितिधीः किं प्रभाषेत् किमासीत् व्रजेत किम्.
Yes, one of you read the translation.
Arjuna said, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged with transcendence? How does he speak and what is his language? How does he sit and how does he walk?
Yes, so this is a inquiry by Arjuna. If you see, any spiritual knowledge is exchanged in the matter of sambhashana, in the matter of inquiry and answering. Yeah, the student inquires and the guru answers. The whole Bhagavad Gita is actually a conversation. Arjuna is inquiring and Krishna is answering. Similarly, if you see Srimad Bhagavatam, it's all about inquiry and answer. The sages of Naimisharanya inquire and Sutta Goswami answers. Yeah, and Parikshit Maharaj inquires and Shukadev Goswami answers. Yeah, and Vyasadev inquires, Narada Muni answers. And later on we see that Vidura inquires and Maitreya answers. So whole spiritual understanding, the topics is basically a conversation between a guru and disciple. So inquiry is such a sublime process. It's a process of actually the expression of an eagerness to learn from a student towards a teacher. And the teacher being pleased by the inquiry, he begins to answer. Actually, that's how even Ramayana came about. Valmiki Maharshi inquires from Narada Muni, is there a real hero in this whole world who personifies all the great qualities of full, of complete knowledge and who is so exemplary in his activities? And he gives a lot of qualities. Is there any person like that? That very question stirs in a lot of devotional emotion in Narada Muni, and that's how he starts narrating the Ramayana. So basically, inquiry is this wonderful process of exchange between the student and teacher. So similarly, Arjuna, having heard till now from Lord Krishna, he has inquired, what are the qualities of a sthita prajna? Sthita prajna means one who is fixed in his consciousness on transcendence. And if you see from this verse 54 unto verse 72 is completely about the answering of this one question by Arjuna. So if you see in this particular verse, there are 4 sub questions. Yeah, Tita Pragyasya ka bhasha samadhisthasya keshava. Yeah, Sthitadhi kim prabhasheta kim asita kim vrajeta kim. So ka bhasha means what are the symptoms? Mark these 4 questions. You can write down. So in this one verse, there are 4 questions, and the remaining section of till the verse 72 is simply the answering of these 4 questions. So what are the 4 questions? Ka bhasha, number 1. What are the symptoms of a sthita prajna? That means a self-realized person. This is what Arjuna is asking. Why did Arjuna ask this question? Because till now, Krishna was speaking about buddhi yoga, that is acting in intelligence. And what is that intelligence? Intelligence is performing your prescribed duties while remaining fixed in the trance of self-realization. That's what is the previous verse all about, right? So when your mind is no longer disturbed by the flowery language of the Vedas, when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. That's the previous verse. Krishna stopped there. So Arjuna is inquiring, you're talking about divine consciousness, Krishna, and one should work in that consciousness. But how do you recognize a person with such consciousness? What are the symptoms of a person with such consciousness? That is question 1. Question 2, Kim Prabhasheta, how does he speak? Yeah, it is said that how do we know about a person? We know about a person when you actually hear what the person is speaking. It is said a fool is often unrecognized until he starts speaking. Some people, they might just be quiet, not uttering a word, and might put up a big show of a very sophisticated person. But when that person opens the mouth and starts speaking, that's when we realize what is the depth of this person's personality. True? So, communication skills that we learn in our colleges and as a part of soft skills in our workplaces, they all help us communicate with good language probably. But the content of your speech, the essence of your speech, communicate the personality within you. In other words, the other way around is, if you have a rich inner personality, that is automatically communicated in your speech, even if your language skills are not great. So that is the meaning of speech. So in this particular verse, Arjuna is asking Krishna, Kim Prabhasheta, how does a self-realized person speak? So there is an inner meaning to this question. When Arjuna is asking Krishna, how does he speak? It just does not merely mean what is his language. It means how does he respond to difficult situations? Like some person might provoke him, insult him, yeah, or infuriate him. In such cases, in such situations, how does a self-realized person react? This is the inner meaning of this question. Yeah, that is Kim Prabhasheta. Then Kim Asita. Asita means how does he sit? So when Arjuna is asking Krishna, how does a self-realized person sit? It does not mean, he's talking about some body language or some style. The inner meaning of this question is, how does he remain undisturbed in the face of allurement of the senses? What is his response? How he's not engaged in the worldly pleasures. That's the meaning. Then fourth question, the final question. Vrajeta Kim, how does he walk? How does he walk? What is the question behind this? It means how he actually practically engages his senses. So the next verses that are going to come about are simply the answers to these questions. Like text 55 is the answer to the first question. Then 56 and 57 are the answer to the second question. 58 and 59 are the answer to the third question. Then 60 to 63 are simply Krishna urging Arjuna to actually, refrain from the idea of running away to the jungle. And 64 till the end, that is 72nd verse, is simply the answer to the fourth question. So this is the background of today's class. So in this 54th verse, there are 4 questions. What are the 4 questions? What's the first question? Anybody?
What are the symptoms?
Yeah, what are the symptoms of?
Astita prajnat.
Sthita pragya, or a self-realized person. That's question 1. What's the second question?
How does he speak?
How does he speak exactly? And what's the inner meaning of how does he speak?
How does he respond to difficult situations?
Ah, exactly. How does he respond to provoking situations? We all get provoked, right? Sometimes somebody says something or in a way that really hurts us, pains us, and initially it turns into, initially it's hurt, later it turns into anger. So how do we respond? How does a self-realized person respond? Yeah, to such situation. Third question.
How does he sit?
How does he sit? Kimasita. What is the deeper meaning of how does he sit?
How does he remain undisturbed in every situation?
Yeah. How he's not engaged in the worldly pleasures, basically. What everybody is running after. This whole world is madly chasing after certain pleasures, right? And they're doing everything to achieve such pleasures. But a sthita prajna, or a self-realized person, does not chase after such things. How he does that? How he remains aloof from chasing after material pleasures. That means kimasita. How does he sit? Vrajeta kim. What's the fourth question?
How does he walk?
How does he walk? Yeah, how does he walk? So what is the inner meaning of how does he walk?
Which parts he's choosing?
So how does he practically engage himself? What does he actually do? How does he engage his senses practically? So what is this sense engagement and all that? I will tell you the details. They all will come in the next verses. Don't worry about that. So let's start with the answers to the question. Text 55. Shri Bhagavan प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तजोच्यते.
श्रीभगवानुवाच प्रजहाति यदा कामान् सर्वान् पार्थमनोगतान् आत्मन्येवात्मना तुष्टः स्थितप्रज्ञस्तदोच्यते.
Yes, one of you please read the translation.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness.
Yeah, pure transcendental consciousness. So these are the symptoms of a self-realized person. So I will try to explain what this is. So basically, we all have a concept of just one more thing. What is this concept of just one more thing? In my life, if I just have this one more thing, I will be happy. Just one more degree added to my name, or just uh, one more piece of land somewhere, or just one more property that I own, or just one more asset that I've been dreaming of, or just this one relationship. Yeah, so we all have this symptom of this one more thing. So why does this desire come that if I just have this one more thing, I will be happy? You take the reverse equation. It means that currently I am incomplete. I am facing some incompleteness in my heart, in my life. That's the conclusion. That's a derivation. That is why a person feels I have this one more thing, I will become happy. So in the process, I will give you a practical analogy. Sometimes we go to some houses, right? And when you go to the house, there is a gate and you try to open the gate and it gets stuck, right? It does not move. Have you had this experience of some houses? Yes. So we go into the house, we try to open the gate, it gets stuck, it doesn't move. Then after trying 2-3 times, then we understand, oh, it has to be opened the other way around. Yeah, it has to be opened inward. Then it opens and you enter inside. So similarly, there's a nice saying that the gate to happiness actually opens inward. And not realizing this, we always try to search this happiness in the external world, just like we are trying to push this gate so that we can just enter into the realm of happiness. The truth is, this gate opens inward. So there is a story of the musk deer. Yeah, there is a musk deer. A musk deer, it's a special kind of a deer, which from its lower part of its body produces amazing fragrance. And the fragrance is so amazing, so intoxicating that the deer itself gets so fascinated by this. And it just goes around not knowing that it's coming from its own body. It just goes around searching everywhere. Oh, from where am I getting this fragrance? Where am I getting this fragrance? It just goes around searching everywhere and becomes exhausted. In fact, it spends its whole life searching for the source of this fragrance and not getting the source of it. Finally, it exhausts itself and it even dies in that search. Similarly, most of the human beings, Anandamayo Bhyasat, it is our original nature of every soul to search for pleasure. Right from a small ant to the biggest demigod like Lord Brahma, everybody is searching for pleasure. An ant is trying to search the pleasure in a sugar crystal. And of course, human beings are trying to search for pleasure in different realms. Because it's the nature of every soul to seek pleasure. But a self-realized person realizes that this pleasure is not outward. Happiness is not a function of external world. In mathematical language, happiness is a function of the inner world. So one who has realized this, these are the symptoms of a self-realized person. So he is happy within himself. Yeah. So he finds satisfaction in himself alone. Text 56. This is also a very famous verse. One can by heart this verse. Dukkheshvanudvignamanaha sukeshu vigataspriha वीतरागभयक्रोधः स्थितधीर्मुनिरुच्यते.
दुःखेषु
Dukeshva
अनुद्विग्नमनः
Yes, one of you.
दुःखेषु अनुद्विग्नमनः सुखेषु विगतस्पृहः वितरागभयक्रोधः स्थितिधीर्मुनिरुच्यते.
Translation.
one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness.
Who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, a stage of steady mind.
Yes, one who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger is called a sage of steady mind. So this particular concept of being steady in dualities, it keeps repeating many a times in Gita. So the reason for repetition is to give the emphasis. So I will try to, from here onwards, Krishna tries to explain what are the qualities of a Sthita Prajna and what are the symptoms, how he sits, etc. So I'll try to explain these in the form of a nice story. This happened in the 12th century. Yeah, it was a time of Shripad Ramanujacharya in South India. If any of you know, Shripad Ramanujacharya is the most prominent acharya of the Sri Sampradaya. And he had a very prominent disciple whose name is Parashara. And Parashara was a very, very powerful guru, and he had many disciples. So one day, one of his disciples approached him and asked Parashara Muni, my dear Gurudev, I have one question. Please answer me this. So Parashara Muni says, yes, what is your question? So the disciple asks, what are the qualities of a self-realized person, and how should I qualify myself to become such? So Parashara Muni said, it's a very good question. And to find this answer, there is a devotee called Ananta who is living at Tirupati Hills. So you go to him, you approach him, and you ask him these questions. This question, and you will be answered. So the disciple was very eager to find his answer. So as he was instructed by his Gurudev, he went to Tirupati and he met the great devotee Anantacharya, his name is. So when he met Anantacharya, he told him, my dear sir, my Gurudev has sent me to you to find out answer for this question that has been plaguing me for long. So Anantacharya asks, what is your question? He says, my question is this: what are the qualities of a self-realized person, and how do I attain those qualities? So Anantacharya was silent. He didn't answer him. In fact, he ignored him. Not for one day, not for 2 days, but for weeks and months. He didn't bother to answer his question. In fact, initially he was served nice prasadam, but later he was not even served on time. And after some time, he was told to serve others. So that's how he was treated. But he kept on. And in this way, 6 months passed and he did not get an answer to his question. And one fine day, there were a lot of guests who came to the ashram of Anantacharya. So at that time, this person came and he sat with his own plate. So he said, no, this is not the time for you to eat. You go and serve the guests. So he went and served all the guests. And after that, again, he brought his plate. He said, no, there is another group coming. Wait. Then he waited and he served the entire second group who came. In this way, from morning, he tried to sit and honor his prasadam. But time passed and it was night. Excuse me. was night. So, yeah. Excuse me. So it was night. At that time, even in the night, after all the guests have left, he has served everybody else in the ashram. And at the end, he just sat down and then he got his plate of prasadam and then he ate sumptuously. So then at this time, Anantacharya called this boy and he asked, "What was your question?" Then he repeated his question. So this is my question. My question is, what are the qualities of a self-realized person and how do I attain these qualities? Then Anantacharya said, you should be like salt, a hen, a crane, and yourself. He said that and he left. And this disciple, he was shocked. He didn't understand one thing. Said, what did he say? He said a disciple should be like salt, like a hen, a crane, and you. What does that mean? And he said, I have answered you. And he's like, I have traveled so long from Tamil Nadu to Tirupati, and I have waited for so long, for 6 months, and is this the answer that I receive? Then, okay, he said superficially, thank you, sir, and he left. He went back to his own guru. So Parashara Muni asked, did you ask him this question? Then the disciple said, yes, sir, I have asked the question and I did receive the answer. So he asked, so what was the answer? So he said, the disciple should be like salt, like hen, like a crane, and like you. And I didn't understand. Then Parashara said, that's such an amazing answer. I will explain you. And he started explaining. A disciple or a self-realized person, a person seeking self-realization should be like salt. What does that mean? What are the properties of salt? In a dish, like when the dish tastes really good, you start.
It enhances the taste.
Yeah, it enhances the taste. Yeah, salt. Property of salt is it enhances the taste, but
And dissolves also.
it dissolves. Yes. So what can be learned through that? Yeah. The same salt
It
that
enhances the taste
yeah.
only when it is in appropriate amount.
Excellent. Yes, very good. It enhances the taste when it is in the right amount. That means if the salt is little more, they start, what is this dish? It's horrible. Or if it is little less, what is this? It's so bland and tasteless. You complain, right? Salt has to be in the appropriate proportion. So a self-realized person, a person seeking self-realization should learn this, that a person has to be balanced. Gita speaks about this concept of balance many a times. Yukta hara viharasya, yukta ashita matparam. That is, a person, what are the qualities of a yogi or a person who is trying to attain transcendence? One should not eat too much or too little. One should not sleep too much or too little. One should not engage in entertainment too much or too little. Vihara means, the appropriate entertainment. So a person should be balanced, just like the salt. So salt teaches balance, being equipoised, being stable. And what's one more thing? One more quality of the salt, that it dissolves and loses its existence. So if a dish is like, for example, you have cooked some nice pulav, yeah, or biryani, If the taste is good, you appreciate the person who cooked it, or you appreciate the ingredients like the vegetables in it or the basmati rice or everything, but nobody appreciates the salt, right? So salt simply gives the flavor, but it is not appreciated. So that's the quality of a person seeking self-realization. That is, you do your part, you do your service, but do not seek recognition and appreciation. So that's what we learn from salt. That's the quality of a person seeking self-realization. It should be like salt. Second is a hen. Why a disciple should be like a hen? What does a hen do? The hen goes even in a clutter, it searches and it pecks and collects the grains. Yeah, have you ever seen a hen in village? What does it do? It keeps pecking like this. There is a lot of kachra, but it knows where exactly the grains are, and it just pecks it and eats that. Similarly, the person seeking self-realization should try to just see the good in others and neglect the bad qualities. When you are interacting, especially with people whom you are really familiar with, automatically the mind tends to get into dwell upon their negativities. So oftentimes we dwell upon others' negativities and our positivities, and thereby get into a mode of justification and complain. But how should a person seeking self-realization be? He should be like the hen, just collect all the good things in the person and leave the clutter. Another thing that you can learn from this hen is that amidst problems, amidst problems, a person seeking self-realization collects only opportunities. For example, right now, if you see the scenario outside, COVID, you have 1,000 reasons to complain and be dissatisfied about life. But an intelligent person is one who tries to see opportunities. Okay, this is the situation. What best I can do in this situation? How best I can mold my life in a way that I become productive and happy. So seeing opportunities amidst problems is again one more thing you can learn from this hen. Then third is crane. So what is the quality of a crane? So if you've ever seen a crane, it stands by the riverside and with one leg. That is why we say sometimes konga japam, right? It stands by with one foot down, and it just keeps observing. It keeps observing. It keeps observing. And sometimes some fishes pass by. A small fish passes by. It does not react. A little bigger fish, it does not move. Then the third small fish moves. Then it doesn't move again. So the big fish thinks, okay, so this crane is safe. It's not doing anything. It is probably in its meditation. Let me also go. And the big fish goes and chuck, the crane catches. So a person seeking self-realization should be like this crane. Why? What are the small fishes? The small fishes are like the distractions, the ordinary distractions of this world. So when these distractions come by or pass by, inviting us to engage in them, a person fixed, in self-realization, he just sees them as things that are passing by. But when there comes an opportunity for hearing from self-realized people or doing some devotional activity or doing something for spiritual upliftment, big fish, catch it. This is what a crane teaches. And finally, my dear disciple, Anantacharya has said, a person seeking self-realization should be like you. Why you? Because you have, in the face of being ignored, neglected, or not been given proper treatment, you were still stayed there determined. You were patient. So these two are the important qualities for a person seeking self-realization. Patience and determination. Patience and determination. And because he was patient and determined, he got the answers to his question. And let me tell you, when we get answers to our inquiries after going through some purification and austerities, that's when we truly treasure those answers and try to follow and imbibe them, just like this disciple. So the disciple was thoroughly convinced, he understood the valuable lessons of life, and being very grateful to his spiritual master Parashara Muni, he started trying to cultivate all these qualities that are essential on the path of self-realization. So tell me, what are the four how should a self-realized person be? What are the four things?
Salt.
Yes, first is salt, like salt,
Hen,
like a hen. Yes,
crane,
like
Train
crane, and
oneself.
yeah, like the disciple who has come to ask these questions. So if you have just understood these these four things, you have actually understood the remaining chapter completely. Yes. So why should a person seeking self-realization be like salt? What does salt teach?
Balanced.
Being balanced. Second,
and also dissolving in that without identifying that it is there.
yeah, by giving up the desire for recognition. Yeah, that's what salt is teaching. Salt is teaching to remain balanced in all situation and to give up the desire for credit and recognition. Good. What's the next one? Hen.
Like hen,
What do you learn from hen?
to pick the good things from all the bad things and concentrate on what we are picking.
Yes. So to pick the good, even amidst bad, like picking up the good qualities of of people, even if they apparently have many other bad qualities, and focusing on that good. And what's the other thing we learn from the hen?
Amid problem, collect only opportunities.
Excellent. Amidst problems, collect opportunities. These are apparently sounding very simple and easy, but please do meditate on this and apply in your life. You can produce miracles. There is no situation you won't be able to cross if we have deeply understood and imbibed these aspects. And yeah. Third one, what's third?
Crane,
Crane. Yeah. And what do we learn from the crane?
wait until the opportunity and catch the big fish. Wait without distraction, getting distracted by seeing the small fishes and everything. Concentrate on the big one and catch it once we get that opportunity immediately.
Yes. So what is the small fish?
The
Distractions.
Small fishes are the distractions of the material world. What's a big fish?
Opportunity.
Opportunity for?
Spiritual upliftment.
Yes, opportunity for spiritual upliftment. Like, for example, let's say, maybe this class, or you're hearing to some spiritual discourse, or it's your time to read Bhagavad Gita. You have your book in front of you, or you just have the book on the table. Yeah, on the table, you have Bhagavad Gita book, and just little away on the TV, there's something very nice coming. Let's say your favorite, but these days what people watch has some Korean dramas, and I don't know, my niece was telling me some famous, these days a lot of people from Korea are becoming very popular as pop singers. And what are those dramas? Madhumita, you know that?
BTS man.
Yes, ma'am.
What's the name?
It's a Korean boy band, ma'am, BTS, that is like famous all over the world for their music.
BTS.
And
Okay.
Korean dramas, I don't know, they're famous, that's it.
Yeah. I'm just hearing. This is really catching up. So, yeah. So on the TV, BTS is coming, let's say. So what's a small fish and what's a big fish here? Provided you're the crane.
BTS is like a small fish in
Yeah, and what's a big fish?
listening to Bhagavad Gita.
Gita. Yes. This is in reality, the application. Of course, you can apply it into your varied situation as you please. Just try to put in some heart and meditation into this particular aspect, and you will find a wide range of applications. Then what's the last thing? What Anantacharya has told, that a disciple should be like you. What were the two qualities that were glorified by Parashara Muni?
Patience, determination.
Patience and determination.
Excellent. Patience and determination. These two are a must. So, because, see, for example, sometimes people say that, my dear teacher, I have started chanting the holy name and I have not found any result still. That is, I'm still becoming angry, or I'm still feeling jealous, or I'm still feeling provoked in trying situations. Why? It takes patience and persistence. For getting an ordinary, a seat in a big institution, let's say like the IIMs or IISc, whatever, how much we work, yeah, with consistent efforts that we put, we get into something. And same if you apply to spiritual life, we need to be persistent, patient, and determined, with determined effort. That's when we get the results, the fruits. Not that we simply start and, I'm not getting anything, and then we leave. That means we have never really tried. So patience and determination are the most important aspects on the path. So the remaining verses are in fact imbibing the very essence of what I have just spoken to you, the qualities. Text 57. So we will just go through a little fast. Yes, sarvatrani did you just open? Yeah. यस्सर्वत्रानभिष्णेहस्तत्तत् प्राप्य शुभाशुभं नाभिनिन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
यः सर्वत्रानभिस्नेहस्तत्प्राप्य शुभाशुभं नाभिनन्दति न द्वेष्टि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
Yes, translation.
In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he might obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge.
Yeah, neither hating it nor despising it. Again, this verse is talking about the duality. A person should be fixed. Text 58. यदा संहरते छायं कूर्मोऽङ्गानीव सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणीन्द्रियातेभ्यस्तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
यदा संहरते चायं कुर्मो अङ्गानि विसर्वशः इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
Yes, translation.
One who is able to withdraw his from sense objects as the tortoise draws its limb within the shell is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness.
Yeah, what a beautiful analogy. So the tortoise and the shell, whenever it finds some hindrance, what does it do? It just withdraws its senses into the shell. So this is how a person should be when it comes to being exposed to the desires of the sense objects. See, for example, in every spiritual path, there are certain do's and don'ts given. Yama, niyama. Yeah, you do this and you don't do that. That's when you can go through the process. So why are do's and don'ts given? It is for the effective performance of the process. For example, You perform the physics experiment, calculation of acceleration due to gravity. If you have to calculate the acceleration due to gravity, you know, the experiment that you perform, there are certain things that are given, right? And these are called, what are they called?
Apparatus.
Apparatus.
Okay, apparatus is one, but there are other things which they say, you know, it should be placed in a, you know, undisturbed environment with a bob of 1 centimeter diameter and with a thread of so much length, and it should be moved. What are all these called?
Precautions.
Another word for it?
Rules, ma'am.
Conditions.
Conditions. They are called something. Do you remember the word controls? Control.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So there are something called controls. That is, you know, this should be the measurement of the diameter of the bob. This should be the measurement of a string. Only when all these are correctly, you know, exactly measured in their exact measurements, that's when you perform the experiment, and that's when you get the result, right? So for every experiment that you perform, certain controls are given, and only by following these controls as it is, the experiment is successfully performed, and that's when you get the result. Similarly, in spiritual life also, when you are taking up a process, there are certain do's and don'ts given. These are called the regulative principles of freedom. And for a person who is following these regulative principles, for that person, when they're following the process, the results are guaranteed. So that's a reason why the path has certain prescribed do's and don'ts. Yeah, next is another important verse. Like, for example, in Krishna consciousness, what are the 4 regulative principles that are stated, which are you know, the destroyers of the pillars? There are 4 pillars of dharma, right? And there are 4 things which destroy the pillars of dharma, and one should avoid these 4 things that destroys these pillars of dharma. And what are those 4? Meat eating, intoxication, gambling, and illicit sex. Wherever these 4 things are prevalent, it's difficult to make progress, rather impossible to make progress on the path of spiritual life, because dharma is seriously hampered. So the next verse speaks about, we all are hearing about controlling of the senses, but how does one practically do that? In the next verse it is stated. This is also an important verse. You can learn this. Vishaya vinivartante niraharasya dehinah rasavarjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate.
विषया विनिवर्तन्ते निराहारस्य देहिनः रसवर्ज्यं रसोऽप्यस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते.
Yes, one of you please read the translation.
Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher state, he is fixed in consciousness.
Exactly, higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. So one thing we all need to understand is that there is nothing artificial about spiritual life. There is no superimposition or a forceful removal of something. It's a natural evolution of a person into his original state of being. There is no force or superimposition. So how does a person transcend the lower tastes? Like, for example, let's say right from childhood, I'm conditioned to something that gives me pleasure, which is not good. And I need to give that up. So how do I do that? Is it something by force? No, Krishna is explaining Rasavajjam rasopyasya param drishtva nivartate, by experiencing a higher taste. For example, so I will give you a small example. Swami Prabhupada has given this movement of Krishna consciousness in the West, in the US, in the time of 1960s and 70s. At that time, what was very prevalent was hippie culture. Hippies, I mean, right now they're not much prevalent, but hippies were very much, that culture was very much prevalent in the West and in the 1960s and 70s. Who are the hippies? They are the hedonistic youth of America who who are totally rebellious and who believe only in unrestricted sense enjoyment and in sensual pleasures. Okay, they can go to any extent for that. So that is hippie culture. So Swami Prabhupada has begun this movement of Krishna consciousness there in US, and he preached about this message of Gita to the hippies. So who were addicted to everything sinful under the sun, everything we can imagine and even beyond. It was to them Swami Prabhupada has imparted this knowledge of Gita. I mean, all glories to his purity. So when they have formed the relationship with Swami Prabhupada, that loving relationship and bonding with their guru, and they obeyed him, and they followed his teachings and they followed his instructions, they gave up all these lower tastes. And with that, earlier the hippie haircut was famous, right? A person has a bushy hair, we call it hippie haircut. So from that bushy hair, they have neatly shaven their heads, and the women have started wearing saris, nicely clothed. And they gave up these 4 principles of sin, intoxication by drugs. They gave up intoxication. Can you imagine? They gave up like drugs. They were so much into drugs, they could not do without cocaine and LSD. Not even one day would pass for them without being intoxicated by marijuana, LSD and all these drugs. But they gave it up. They gave up their meat eating habits. They got married, thereby giving up illicit sex. And they gave up gambling and other such lowly tendencies. And they have not just giving up, they have taken a vow to give up these 4 pillars of adharmic life. And that's how they led their whole life. They have taken that vow back in 1960s and 70s, and till date they're living such a pure life. And what transformation! If you look at them, or if you hear from them, they have become such pure saints. This is the process of spiritual life. Take up to the process, follow the instructions of the guru, and the life is transformed to such a pure state of being. Yeah. So, and how did they all do it? What was the higher taste for the hippies? It was their wonderful relationship and bonding with their teacher, Swami Prabhupada. That was their higher taste. So this higher taste comes in the form of such a relationship with one's spiritual master, or the higher taste comes in the form of one's taste for some devotional activity. Like somebody really loves to sing for the Lord. Somebody loves to, chant the holy names of the Lord, or somebody loves to do some service like deity worship, or somebody just loves to, admire the beauty of the Lord. This is the higher taste. When you get a taste for that, all the lower tendencies automatically fall off. Yes. So the taste for something spiritual and divine like that comes as a blessing from many lives. And from our side, yes, our attachment to a spiritual person also gives us that higher taste, on the strength of which we give up the lower tendencies. Text 60. यततो ह्यपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः.
यततो हि अपि कौन्तेय पुरुषस्य विपश्चितः इन्द्रियाणि प्रमाथीनि हरन्ति प्रसभं मनः.
Sorry, 11:34. Yeah. Translation. One of you please read the translation.
The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them.
Yeah, the senses are so strong. What are the 5 senses?
Touch, taste, hear,
Yeah.
smell,
Hmm.
See and eyes.
eyes. Yeah,
Yeah.
sight.
Sight. Sense of sight, sense of smell, sense of taste, sense of hearing, and sense of touch. These are the 5 senses. So even one of this sense can actually drag a person to major distractions. Actually, there is something called Viveka Chudamani, a book which explains through the examples of different animals, which by being carried away by one of the sense actually fall into a death trap. For example, sense of sight. There is something called a moth. Moth is like a firefly. It's attracted by fire. Wow, this fire looks so blazing, so beautiful. Let me go and see what it is. So when the moth enters the fire, what happens? Immediately it gets burnt and it dies. So it got distracted by what? By its sense of sight. And there is sense of smell. The bee is enamored by the smell of honey that's being emanated by certain flowers. So being enamored by this smell of the honey, it enters the flower, and what happens? This flower actually closes. In botany, we've learned the name of this flower. I don't know if anybody remembers.
Fly trap. Fly
Fly
trap.
trap. Okay, yeah, there's also a botanical name for this. Maybe my father will know, I'll ask him. So this flower just closes and then the bee dies, and it's just sucked in. It's a trap. And what was it carried away by? By its sense of smell. Yeah. Then there is sense of hearing. There is a deer. Deer gets captivated by sounds. So what does a hunter do? The hunter plays melodious drum. So when the hunter starts playing melodious drum, the deer gets attracted to that sound and it comes searching from where this music is coming. And that's when the hunter traps. So what was the sense that trapped the deer? The sense of hearing. Then the sense of taste. The fish has a lot of taste for eating worms. That is why, what does a fisherman do? On the bait, he puts the worms and he puts it in the water. So the fish being attracted to that worm, for the taste of the worm, it goes to, catch the worm. And in the process, it gets caught. That led to its death. And sense of touch. An elephant is really crazy about a female elephant, a male elephant. So male elephant is really crazy about a female elephant. So what does a hunter do? He ties up a trained female elephant, which are just beside a big ditch that he has uh, dug. There's a big ditch he digs, and they put some grass over it, and they put a female elephant close by, which is a trained one. So the male elephant, wanting the touch of the female elephant, he comes walking, being enamored by the female elephant. And what does he do? He steps into that grass and he falls into that big ditch. So what was the sense he got carried away by?
Touch.
Sense of touch. Yeah. So the senses can drag a person down and make one even lose discrimination. So each one of the sense could actually bewilder the animal. So a human being is always operating with 5 senses, and there are so many things, the sense objects, that are pulling us in so many directions. So the eyes want to go and see nice things to make oneself happy. The ears want to go and listen to good music. The nose wants to smell nice things. So all senses are always craving that I want this, so that I will be happy. And they're dragging us in different directions. So what does a devotee do? What does a person who is self-realized, how does he handle these pushings of the senses? Let's see. Yeah, this is also an important verse. Tani sarvani samyamya yukta sita matparaha vashehi yasyendriyani tasya pragya pratishtita.
तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परा वशे हि यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
Yeah, translation.
One who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control, and fixes his consciousness upon me, is known as a man of steady intelligence.
Yes. So, how do we keep the senses under full control? This is actually given by an example in the life of Ambarish Maharaj. Ambarish Maharaj is a great king. So, he explains that what does he do with his senses? Is it possible to control the senses artificially? No. So, how do we handle the senses then? Simple. Engage them in a devotional activity. So he's writing here, Savai Manah Krishna Padara Vindayor. What does he do with his mind? He engages his mind at the lotus feet of the Lord. Vachamsi Vaikunta Gunanu Varnane. His power of speech, he's simply engaging in glorifying the glories of Vaikuntha. Yeah. Karau Harer Mandina Marjanadishu. That means he's using his hands. The king, imagine, he's using his hands to clean the temple. And Shrutim Chakachita Sat Kathodaye. He's engaging his ears in hearing about Harikatha. So in this way, he's engaging each of his senses in a devotional activity. So practically in our life too, like what we can do, we are so enamored by music. So let's develop some taste for, I mean, some people already have the taste. And that's the beauty of classical music. If any of you have learned classical music, if you have learned classical music right from your childhood, it's very beautiful, because classical music is all about glorifying the Lord. Annamacharya Kirtans, or you say Tyagaraja Kirtans and Ramadas Kirtans. All these are pure glorification of the Lord. And if you have a taste for it, it's amazing. You have already purified your sense of hearing and mind. You personally see, if you personally see, some of your friends might be classical singers. You just observe them closely, their thought processes and their speech and their desires, they're all very fine tuned. Why? Because that sound vibration automatically purifies a person. My husband has a friend whose daughter, she's learned classical music right from childhood. If you see her, it's so amazing to see her. The way she speaks and the way her consciousness is, everything is so beautiful. Because the music, the sound vibration purifies a person so much. So that's how one should practically look out for ways of engaging the senses. So, actually that's what the whole devotional life is all about. It's a practice. Yeah. Then these are very important verses. We'll quickly read and we'll finish. Dhyayato vishayan pumsa sangasteshu pajayate sangat sanjayate kama kamat krodho bhijayate.
ध्यायतो विषयान् पुंसः सङ्गस्तेषु उपजायते सङ्गात् सञ्जायते कामः कामात् क्रोधो अभिजायते.
Yes, somebody finish it. Translation.
While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them, and from such attachment, lust develops, and from lust, anger arises.
Yes, there's a very important word in this particular translation. And of course, the verse. What is that word? Contemplation. Contemplation means one should keep a check on what we are contemplating about. What is contemplation? For example, you have seen something that is disturbing to the senses, to the eyes, let's say. But you are, that's fine. You have two options. Either you leave it at that, or you keep on meditating on that. Or somebody has said something that has hurt us. Again, there are two options. Either, we leave it at that, or we keep contemplating. And when we contemplate, what happens? Attachment develops. You become attached to that particular scene. Like we see in the life of Ajamil. Ajamil is a Brahmana. He was a very pure Brahmana, right from his birth. He performed all austerities. So one day he was passing by a forest and he saw, a prostitute and that prostitute with another man. And they were, kind of behaving in a very obscene way. And just by seeing that, he got very distracted. And not just distracted, he went back home and he was just contemplating about that same thing. The same old thing was repeating in his mind, that he got so enamored by it that he left behind all his Brahmanatva. He left behind his wife, to whom he was dharmically married, and he went and married this prostitute. So contemplation can really degrade a person, especially contemplation about a wrong thing. So, we are living in Kali Yuga, where there is, a test for our senses every moment. You go out and see on the billboards, there are so many nonsensical things. So how do we overcome? Let's see in contrast how the life of a devotee is. There's a great saint called Haridas Thakur, just 500 years ago. And he used to simply chant the holy name of the Lord. And he's also called the Namacharya. So one day when he was chanting the holy name of God, there were some people who are his opponents who didn't like what he was doing. So they came together and they actually sent a beautiful prostitute to him to move him away from his path, to distract him from his path. So this prostitute went and stood by him. But Haridas Thakur, it was a secluded place where he was chanting. So Haridas Thakur, he didn't give up his chanting. He continued the chanting of the holy name. So this prostitute went back. She came the next day again, he chanted and he chanted. He told, just wait. So this prostitute was waiting. And he was chanting and chanting and chanting. And this prostitute got so affected by the pure chanting of the man, of Srila Haridas Thakur, that she also got transformed. She said, she fell at his feet and said, I'm sorry that I have come with a vicious purpose, but in your holy presence, my heart got transformed. I want to live a pure life, a life of purity. And I also want to engage myself in chanting the holy names of God. So that is the power of a devotee. That is the power of chanting of the holy names with purity. Not only does it transform oneself, it can also transform the other person. While on the other hand, even if you simply live a life of austerities and high Brahmanical principles, but one roaming sense, that is one event, could actually degrade a person. Yeah, text 63. Krodhat bhavati sammoha, sammohat smriti vibhramaha, smriti bhramshat buddhinasho, buddhinashat pranashyati.
क्रोधात् भवति सम्मोहः सम्मोहात् स्मृतिविभ्रमः स्मृतिभ्रंशात् बुद्धिनाशो बुद्धिनाशात् प्रणश्यति.
Yeah, translation.
From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool.
Yeah, this is a whole big cycle actually in these two verses. It started from contemplation on the object of senses, then attachment, from attachment, anger, from anger, delusion, from delusion, bewilderment of memory, and one falls down into memory. This whole big thing is a cycle of how a person's senses can degrade a person. 64. Ragadvesha vimuktaistu vishayanindriyaischaran atmavashyarvidheyatma prasadamadigaccati.
रागद्वेष वियुक्तेस्तु विषयान् इन्द्रियैश्चरन् आत्मवश्यैर्विधेयात्मा प्रसादम् अधिगच्छति.
Yeah.
but a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord.
Yeah, so from this verse 64 till the end is the answer to the last question, that is Kim Rajeta. That means how does one practically engage one's senses. 65. Prasade sarva dukkhanam hanir asyopajayate prasanna chetaso hyashu buddhi paryavatishtate.
प्रसादे सर्वदुःखानां हानिर्ह्यस्योपजायते प्रसन्नचेतसो ह्येषु बुद्धिः पर्यवतिष्ठते.
Translation.
For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established.
Yes, exactly. Text 66. Nasti buddhira yuktasya nacha yuktasya bhavana nacha bhavyatah shantir ashantasya kutasukam.
नास्ति बुद्धि अयुक्तस्य न च अयुक्तस्य भावना न च भावयत शान्तिर् अशान्तस्य कुतः सुखम्.
Translation.
One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace?
Yes, here the whole key is given. What is the key? Connection to the Supreme. That's the key to have transcendental intelligence or steady mind. What all we are speaking about right now, the Buddhi Yoga, the transcendental intelligence, the stage of steady mind. How is it possible? It's possible by connection to the Supreme. Yeah. For one who is not connected to the Supreme, they cannot have any of this, transcendental intelligence or steady mind. And of course, without such, there is no peace. 67. Indriyanam hi charatam yanmanonu vidhiyate tadasya harati prajnam vayurnavam ivambhasi.
इन्द्रियाणां
Yeah. Verse.
इन्द्रियाणां हि चरतां यन्मनोनुविधीयते तदस्य हरति प्रज्ञां वायुर्नावमिवाम्भसि.
Yes.
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence.
Yes. When just like strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water. What a beautiful analogy. There's a boat in the water, strong wind comes and boat goes somewhere. Similarly, one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can actually carry away man's intelligence. We saw the examples of the 5 animals who got distracted by the sense of sight.
Ajamila.
Yeah, Jamila. Yeah, but the 5 animals we were.
Elephant.
Moth.
Yeah, sense of sight is moth. Sense of smell?
Bee.
Bee, exactly. Sense of taste?
Fish.
Fish. Wonderful. Sense of hearing?
Deer.
Deer. Excellent. And sense of touch?
Elephant.
Elephant. Great. Yeah, last 4 verses. Tasmadyasya mahabaho nidhrihitani sarvashah indriyanindriyatebhyastasya pragya pratishtita.
तस्मद्धस्य महाबाहो निगृहीतानि सर्वशः इन्द्रियाणि इन्द्रियार्थेभ्यः तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता.
Translation.
Therefore, O mighty armed, one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence.
Yeah. Speaking about the glory of restrained senses. Text 69. Ya nisha sarva bhutanam tasyam jagarti samyami yasyam jagrati bhutani sa nisha pashyato munehe.
या निशा सर्वभूतानां तस्यां जागर्ति संयमी यस्यां जागृति भूतानि सा निशा पश्यतो मुनेः.
Translation.
What is the night for all beings is the time of awakening for the self-control. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective sage.
Yeah, I'll give you a gross example for this. What they're saying is, what is like time of awakening for the self-control is a time of sleeping. I mean, for the materialistic person. And what is time of sleeping for a materialistic person? I mean, for a self-realized person, that is a time of awakening for a spiritual person. I'll give you a small example if you can relate to this. There is something called that is Mangal Aarti, which happens in the temple every day at 4:30 in the morning. Yeah. So sometimes, I used to attend this Mangal Aarti every day a few years back. At Abbott's ISKCON temple, or when I was in Pune, I used to go to Pune. When I was in Bombay, I used to go to Bombay temple. So it's at 4:30 a.m. So when we are going to the temple at 4:30, there used to be some people coming on bikes, just back from let's say, their parties. So we are going to the temple after waking up early in the morning, taking bath and entering the temple. And here are people who have just finished their day, their night, their mazar, their party, and they're going back home. So this is a time of awakening for a spiritualist. It's a time of sleeping for the materialist. So this is like the gross example of what it is. Text 70. Apuryamana machala pratishtham samudramapa pravishanti yadvat tadvat kama yam pravishanti sarve sashanti mapnoti na kama kami.
आपूर्यमाणम् अचलप्रतिष्ठं समुद्रमापः प्रविशन्ति यद्वत् यद्वत् कामायं प्रविशन्ति सर्वे स शान्तिम् आप्नोति न कामकामी.
Very good. Translation.
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever being filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires.
This is another beautiful analogy. So we might get this question. I mean, I'm sorry that it went a little late today, but we are ending the second chapter. That's why I've gone ahead. From next week onwards, it will stop by sharp 11:30, because third chapter onwards, they are relatively small. So only second chapter is the biggest chapter, second and 18th chapter. Remaining chapters are relatively small, so we'll finish faster. So there's a beautiful analogy that is given here. That is rivers. When the rivers flood, like when it rains heavily, so waters flood, and when the waters flood a shallow lake, what happens? The lake is overwhelmed with these waters and it overflows. But the same rivers, when they flood into the sea is so full in water that how much ever rivers flood into it, you never see a sea overflowing. It's still. Can you tell me why? Why does a lake overflow and a sea does not overflow when there is water gushing
Because
into
of
it?
size, Mataji.
Yes, that's very good.
Lake has boundaries and ocean don't have boundaries.
Okay, very poetic. So sweet. Natural poet and artistic. Yeah, very nice thought process. Exactly. So it's actually the river is shallow. It has very less quantity. That is why whenever little water comes in, it overflows. But a sea has such huge quantities that even if you add little water, it does not make a much difference to it. So it's still, it is calm. So similarly, a person who is full in spiritual intelligence, that is, or who is complete in himself, even if the desires flow into him, they do not become overwhelmed. Like, for example, some people think that spiritual life means, a spiritualist means the person has no desires. That's a very wrong conception. Desire is the very function of the soul. The soul is present, the soul has desires. Some people say that I want to become desireless. But to become I want to become desireless. That is also a desire, na? So at no point of the time can a soul be without desires, because desire is a function of the soul. But how does a person react to the inflow of such desires? Everybody has material desires, materialistic ambitions, etc. To make it big, or to really achieve some materialistic gains. So these desires are very deeply embedded in the ocean of our heart, and sometimes just like the dolphin comes up, or a shark just comes up like this, one of the material desire just pops up and goes in, and we think, okay, I have this desire. No, under the water is a big fauna, a big group of these sharks. So what you're seeing is just the surface of the sea. Deep within our heart there are innumerable desires, as many as the innumerable aquatics in a sea. Each of us, once in a while, one desire just comes up. Okay, I want some casula peru, or I want some diamond ring. Once in a while it just keeps coming up, and we say, okay, I only have this desire. But the reality is, deep down within there is a big plethora of aquatics. How does it's not that a spiritual person is not affected by desires. They do have desires, but how do they react? They react just like this ocean. Just like the ocean is not disturbed by the inflows of desire, a spiritually elevated person is not disturbed by these desires. Whereas the other person, a person who does not have a spiritual foundation, whenever these desires flow inside, they get agitated. I need to do something about it. And they spend their whole life, their whole energy into fulfilling those desires, only to know that once fulfilled, more desires come. It's not that once I got a diamond ring and it's done. Next, I want a diamond necklace. And after diamond necklace, I want a diamond Vardhanam. And it goes on and on. Yes. So this is the theory of desires. The last two verses also speak about that. Vihaya kaman yas sarvan pumams charati nishpriha nirmamo nirahankara sashantim adhigachyati.
विहाय कामान्य सर्वान् पुमांश्चरति निःस्पृहा निर्ममो निरहङ्कारः सा शान्तिमधिगच्छति.
Yeah, translation.
A person who has given up all the desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and is devoid of false ego, he alone can attain peace.
Yeah. So what is the way to peace? Is to become free from the desire to somehow chase those desires and have them satisfied. That's a way to more anxiety. But one who just tolerates those desires, as just like these waters are coming in, fine, I don't have to be overwhelmed by it or overflowed because of them. Last verse. Esha brahmi sthiti partha nainam prapya vimuhyati स्थित्वास्याम अंतकालेपि ब्रह्म निर्वाणम रुच्यति.
एषा ब्राह्मी स्थितिः पार्थ न एनां प्रापे विमूयति स्थित्वा अस्याम् अन्तकालेऽपि ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं रिच्यति.
Translation.
That is the way of the spiritual and godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If one is thus situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God.
Yeah, so Lord Krishna concluded this chapter by giving the key and by giving the ultimate destination. So you might all think, we are talking so much about control of senses, so much of being stable and not being overwhelmed. Why do we need to do all this? Why do we have to follow the regulative principles? Why do we have to follow all the do's and don'ts of spiritual life? Why should we even practice this path? So Krishna has given the desert at the end of this chapter. If one is situated even at the hour of death, yeah, in this consciousness, what will happen to him? One can enter into the kingdom of God. So if I do all this, what's in it for me? Go back to Godhead, the place where there is eternal and lasting happiness, where we all belong to originally, which is free from the fourfold problems of human life. Janma, Mrityu, Jara, Vyadhi. Yeah. Birth, death, old age and disease. And of course, where there is no corona. Thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any quick one question I can take and we will wind up. And please know, from next time onwards, it will be stopped by 11:30 itself. Yeah. Yes, Madhumita.
Ma'am, you have told that happiness starts from inside, na ma'am. So, does external world have no role to play for one's happiness?
Good question. External world has no role to play. We are talking about the happiness that is lasting, that is true, that is not disturbed by external circumstances. We're talking about that happiness. We're talking about the inner happiness that comes by connecting yourself to the divine. Basically, whenever you connect something to the permanent, it is lasting. When you're connecting to something that is external, what is the nature of the external world? The only thing that is constant in the external world is change. That's what is the saying, right? Everything keeps changing. Everything keeps changing. If you think that what's going to make me happy is, let's say, okay, tell me what will make you happy? Okay, what will make an average person of your age happy? What's happiness for them?
For now, I guess going to college.
See, Corona has really made happiness such a relative thing. Going to college and meeting friends has become a source of happiness. In fact, it has become a definition of happiness. Yes. But I'll tell you, once you start going to college, ask the people who are going to college regularly. What do they wait for? They wait for bunking the classes and going to a movie. Isn't it? So where is your definition of happiness gone? No longer in college, because people at college, they're bored. They said, they keep planning. You know, at least when I was in college, what do you do at college? You come together with friends as a group and you plan which theater, which movie, or which friend, which party. That's all, na? So you keep planning, your conception of happiness has changed. So that's the happiness of this external world. That's what I was telling.
Okay, ma'am, got it. Thank you.
So you're intelligent. You got it. So whenever the happiness is derived from an inner connection with the higher supreme, that's a lasting happiness. It's undisturbed. In fact, it's undisturbed by any external circumstances, and it's lasting. And it brings in true peace for a person. And it can only be experienced. How much ever I explain, it's difficult to understand. Because for a person who has not tasted gulab jamun, let's say, I tell them, gulab jamun, it's round, it's sugary, it's sweet, it's this, it's that. I can give you a lot of definitions about it. But the best thing is the person has to taste it. So that's how the proof of the pudding is in eating. That's what they say. So that's the nature of inner and spiritual happiness. It's blissful. Okay, nice questions. Any more? Okay, you all can post your questions. Yes, Anusha? Okay, so any questions you can post in the group. We will begin third chapter from next week onwards. Thank you all very much. Thank you for your eager hearing and your participation. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you, Soumya. Thank you, Jyotsna. And thank you to everybody who have read the translations. Jai.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Madhumita. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Sarita.
Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Bhargavi. Thank you all. Thank you, Yogita. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Sindhuja. Thank you so much, everybody.
Mataji, happy Mother's Day too.
Today is Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day to one and all here, to your respective lovely mothers, and for all the mothers that are there here. It is said that the mother's love is closest to what is unconditional love of the spiritual world. It's the love that is expressed without any expectations. If you really want to taste what is unconditional love, it's the love of the mother towards a child. So happy Mother's Day to all. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you.